Hello, welcome back to the second part of the lecture on using CSS for page layout control. In part one, we looked at the importance of and the concept of creating a wireframe or a page sketch as a starting point. Develop more in the workshops later on. And then we said we could convert that sketch into the HTML you need for the parts of the page, including the grouped areas, and then use CSS to style it and move elements around the page to put them where you want them to be. To understand how to do that, the concept of the box model is very important, as every single part of the page, every element of the page, every tag has its own individual box around it, and that has kind of padding, margin, borders, width and height, and so on. And you can manipulate those CSS to move that box around the page, control the width and height, etc. Take a look at what I mean as an example. So pop to the browser, get some code. Basically look at this example here, find H1, it's in the box, paragraph in a box, that paragraph in a box, etc. Because the H1 and the two P tags are both, well, they're all sort of block elements, they naturally sort of stretch right across the page and fill the width up by default. See more of that in a second. So the box model is important. Bear in mind when you are manipulating the box, you need to take into account the width of any sort of margins, borders, and padding, etc. as well. We're going to have what will fit across the page in a line, but we'll come to more of that later on. So the example we just saw before was working on what's called normal page flow. On a normal page flow, the elements of the page exist and they're presented in the order they appear in the HTML code. So the H1 first, H2, sorry, the paragraph tag, first paragraph tag, and the second paragraph tag, one after the other, sort of stacked above in the order they are in the HTML code itself, in their boxes. And by default, they stretch across the page. There's the block level tags to fill available space and as much height as required for their particular size. And if we go to the example again on the web browser, and we try to resize the page, see what happens. Basically, as you create more space going to the larger size screen, the paragraphs in the H1 flow across the page from the new space available to them, going back, less space, so they become sort of taller, for more vertical space, less horizontal space, kind of flowing into the space available to them, as we say, is called normal page flow. Flows across and down the page into the available space by default. Now, using CSS, we can monkey about with that process of normal flow and change it in different kind of ways. As examples of how we can do that on the page, different methods. So we're going to look at float and flex next week. Great. Excuse me, sound. Frog in the throat, do apologize. Let's look at floating first. So we've got an example here of an image and text. Typical example of what you might want to do on a page. It's a line that image and text next to each other, kind of on the same line, if you will, on the page. On normal flow, for any CSS, got the image first, it'll appear first, followed by the paragraph text kind of below it, like so. For applying some CSS to the image, we can float it from where it would normally be a normal flow across to either the far right of the paragraph or to the left of the paragraph, aligning them together like so. Take a look at the code to achieve this. So what we've done is we've put the image, if you look on the left hand side there, you can see we've put the image inside of the paragraph. Okay, why, Gary, have you done that? Well, because basically we've made the paragraph what's known as the parent, and the image the child, and the text inside the paragraph the child of the paragraph as well. So we can monkey about with the alignment of the image relative to its parent on the page. Make the boxes move around the page where there's otherwise would be in a normal flow. So basically I've made a class there attached to the planets graphic, dot planets on the right hand side here. I said float right, and it floats right with the paragraph text going across, as you can see. And what happens to the paragraph text itself is it comes up to fill the vacated space of the image going across the page. Kind of flows and wraps around the image, if you will. So colour the paragraph text in a background colour, so you can see the effect how that's moved across on the page. Take a look at this in code terms in the browser. The full code there, as you can see, web page, paragraph tags, parent, image, and the text as the child element of the paragraph. And we've set it to the image go to the right of that paragraph text there, using this kind of CSS, as I can see. That kind of worked. Find the graphic example. It's kind of worked there. And basically, say if we resize this page, see what happens. You can see that basically, again, everything flows around the page as before, but it flows with the image floating to the right of the text. And you can see the paragraph text and you get less space. It begins to flow more further down the page, so less width available to it, and it flows around the image. Occasionally get a bit close. So what we can do is we can add a margin to the image to space it out from the text. So I say margin dash left colon, let's say 5%. Then retest. What we should see, if I can press the right buttons, I never can. It's probably a bit too much, but basically you can see we create the effect of creating the distance and the spacing around that, as we want to do the same with the bottom as well, as we wish. And to make the image go to the left, all we do is say float left. So float far to the left on the page as it will go relative to its parent paragraph. And so again, you'd have to change the margins, of course, so it work better, but to get the general idea that you can put it to the left or the right of a parent, creating sort of in effect a kind of two-column kind of approach, kind of look and feel, and aligning graphics and text on the page. It's becoming useful for you later on, I would hope. Okay, so back to the slides. This is an example. I want to look at this in detail, but basically you can align anything next to each other. Yeah, so it's useful where you want to align two things next to each other, having one thing float to the right or the left of the other thing. So in this case, we're saying we could do it with text and paragraphs if we wanted to, aligning the one paragraph 2 there against the other paragraphs on the page if we wish to do so. So you can look at it if you want. The next element we want to look at is flex, which is very useful if you want to align multiple elements. Where float's really if you want to align two things together, like I mentioned in the text, two paragraphs. If you want to align multiple things together, like you got sort of it says on that slide there, menu bars, menu items in a navigation list, galleries of images, product listings, and it'll throw in little sections. Put them all to align in a row or a column, as is typical. Then flex is the way to go to achieve that. What we do is we kind of use the display flex code, display property value flex. We'll see in a second or two. And we can create a flex direction to make go in a row or a column. So you want your navigation menu, for example, horizontally across the page or stacked vertically. And this is very good for an adaptive design that resizes well for a kind of, as we'll see later, a fluid layout that sort of adapts with the size of the screen nicely. Some examples. I'll get the code for this in a second or two. Basically there we've got sort of three products, dummy details in there, dummy text. You've got sort of three things I put in a blue border there so you can make it stand out. The kind of the child elements of the flex parent, which I've coloured sort of orange there on the page. Can we look at that more in a second? And I've set on that parent container for all three sections. Display flex, turn that container box, the outer box, the orange one, into a flexible container area where things can flex or go in a row or a column inside that box as we wish. I set flex direction row. We'll align around an axis there in a row stacking across the page. If I want them to go vertically, let's say the design is moved from so a desktop size screen to a laptop size screen to a mobile screen. You wouldn't want necessarily things going across the page because there's not enough space. You want them to stack in a vertical fashion, so we can change that very quickly and easily. HTML stays completely the same, but we switch the display flex from flex direction row to flex direction column. And the align around an axis there and a column instead. So very powerful thing to actually to use is flex. Let's take a look at some of this code to build this. You do this in the labs, of course, something similar, because common technique that you can apply to your assignment work and other work that you do at the university and beyond. So here I've got some HTML. I've got a main section for the page, for the main page content, here to here. And the main we're going to turn into the parent, the kind of the bit that had sort of the orange border around on the slide a moment or two ago. And then I've created three sections. I've subdivided the main into logical sections, one for each three made up products. Great product 1, product 2, product 3, with some dummy text in them as well. Okay, the idea is these sections are child elements of the parent called main. And I set some CSS on main. I set display flex direction rows. They're going to the sections will go horizontally across the page, flexing inside the box. And I put a margin around them to put a bit of space in here and there. And I set width to 32% on the page. And I'm going to also set a background color on the sections so I can see more clearly in my example where they are on the page. I'm going to choose aqua kind of mood for some reason. There we go, so that's done. Let's see if that works. Fingers crossed. Refresh the page. And all the sections have gone aqua. All things gone aqua, that's not what I wanted. Yeah, what have we done wrong there? I must have made some kind of mistake in the CSS in some fashion. Or actually, of course, there's no gap between them. These ones, that's why. It's basically no gap between the different sections, so they're all kind of blending together in the same color, I believe. Get live demos progress. also missed off the percentage on the margin right, which may have had an effect. Take that down slightly as well to create enough space. And we'll try again. Or even lectures make mistakes. There we go. So you can see we've got three distinct sections. First of all, we've got slightly different height in terms of the content. Now, before Flex, that was very difficult to get the boxes to the same height to look nice and neat on the page. Flex, they automatically all become the same height, so it's fantastic compared to old-fashioned techniques we had to use in the not-so-distant past. Okay. If we now try and add, and obviously if we resize the page, we'll do that first. We can see the moment that the flow into the page space getting higher and narrower as space goes and wider. But you might want to, as we said, have them all sort of change of the space. So we said we could do is change the flex from row to column. So they stack vertically if they get down to a mobile size or even sort of perhaps tablet size or whatever you think of in your design sketch you've done. There we are, there they went in the columns. About an intermediate stage though, basically where they go from having sort of 3 of them on a row to 2 on a row with 1 going below. And that you can achieve a flex as well. So we can say, we'll put that back to row. And we can say basically allow flex wrap. We're going to wrap onto the line, virtual line below. So we say flex wrap wrap. Make them a bit bigger to simulate them not going on the one line by default. We want to space them all to go on one line to get all these numbers up. Margins and widths. There we go. So basically the wrap down below to the line below, that sort of lower sort of screen width in place. And you could do that with any amount of elements you want. So that effect happen. Let's pause for another 2 seconds. And we'll create a 4th product by simply quickly copying that section for want of the easy method. Create a 4th one. Create product 4. Bear with me. Save that. Go to the CSS. And let's say 25 or 24% because it's 4 of them. You can play the numbers and see what works best. That's all I'm doing. For them there. To resize the page again. The numbers aren't quite right there for it to wrap. So we make that 25. There we are, the wrap down onto the lines below. And if you move to smaller and smaller widths, you can see they respond nicely on the page there, as you would want them to do. So drop down into the previous lines below it, etc. The last example I want to look at. Lots of examples where you can use flex to create a simple navigation menu like this. So we look at in inspect, go horizontal menu, and I've created by using the nav tag. Say they want a navigation block. I use ULs as we mentioned in the last lecture. to basically create an ordered list, because a list of links. Each menu item inside of that, the li tag. There's a tag inside the li for that one. And for that one there. And we made that sort of menu go horizontal rather than the default as it would be under lists sort of vertical using CSS. So there's our HTML. And there's the CSS. Excuse me again. So basically I've said target the UL, the list, which is going to be the Flex parent, inside the nav. For each of the Flex items, the li tags, and set Flex on the parent on the list. Extraction row, list style none to take off the default bullet points in the list, and put a margin on the list items. And space them out on the page a bit as well. You wanted that navigation list to go columns. Again, if space didn't permit to be in a row, or you fancied columns, your design, we can simply switch that from flex direction row to column. There we go. HTML remains exactly the same, but the presentation is different because we switched to CSS flex direction from row to column. Couple examples, lots of ways you can use flex and float. You explore some in the workshop tasks, and also beyond in the module kind of later on. There's a more full example of how it might look if you have a sort of larger menu on the page with some more background color set and so on. Okay. So just to recap, use float is best to be used when there's a single tag or element you want to move to one side of another. I'll kind of flow around it if it needs be. And flex is best for making multiple elements like menus or product lists and galleries and things sit side by side or one above the other in a column if you wish. And that's really it for this little mini lecture. Next time we will look at using CSS Grid to create whole page layout and move the area blocks like the navigation area itself to where you want it on the page. And obviously cover that in that week's workshop as well. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.